Have you ever felt like a giant fog just rolled in over your life? Like you're not sure what to do next, which way to go, or even if you're still on the right path? It's as if everything suddenly turns blurry, your plans lose their meaning, and a quiet unease starts creeping in. That's what uncertainty feels like, silent but draining. But think about it this way. Maybe that fog isn't there to push you off course, but to invite you to see things differently. Because sometimes the brightest lessons in life hide right inside those moments when nothing seems clear. Marcus Aurelius put it well. Every event comes to test you and your true strength appears right there. In other words, uncertainty isn't necessarily your enemy. It might be your test. Still, when we hear uncertainty, most of us think anxiety, fear, even anger. The what if it goes wrong question eats you up. This is where the Stoic approach kicks in. Stoicism is a way of thinking that teaches us how to stand tall in the face of the things we can't control. As Epictetus said, the only thing you truly control is your own attitude. Here's the thing. Being stoic doesn't mean being emotionless. It actually means noticing your emotions, managing them, and directing them wisely. The first step in dealing with uncertainty isn't to fight it. It's to learn how to live with it. Take Seneca's letters from exile, for example. They're proof that even in the middle of uncertainty, you can discover your inner strength. In this video, we're going to talk about how a stoic man can face uncertainty. I'll share real examples from history and from philosophers themselves, so you'll see not just theory, but methods grounded in real life. Before we dive into the first part, I'd love your support to help this channel grow and reach more people who need it. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends who you think might benefit. So if you're ready, let's light the first torch that will guide us through the fog of uncertainty. Most of the time, uncertainty doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. Questions like, what happens if I don't take this offer? Or what will I lose if I miss this opportunity? Don't have clear answers. That's when your mind steps in, trying to fill the blanks with its own scenarios. And this is exactly where the Stoic view comes in. Not managing the events themselves, but managing what you think about them. Because if a situation you can't control starts growing in your head and turns into anxiety, it can sweep you away. But if you control your thoughts, you can stay steady even in the middle of uncertainty. Epictetus's life after gaining his freedom is full of examples of this. In Rome, powerful and wealthy people wanted to sponsor him, to have him teach in glittering halls. The outcomes of these offers were completely uncertain. Maybe he'd gain fame and security, or maybe he'd lose his character. In the middle of that uncertainty, he chose the path that was within his control. He moved to a humble hut in Nicopolis. Rather than live in places that looked like his former master's mansion, he said, I won't go back to a place that could corrupt my character. This was a concrete example of not letting uncertainty's winds stir up anxiety, but instead letting his principles guide him. And that choice helped him keep the same mental discipline with the small uncertainties of daily life. Every morning he made conscious decisions about teaching, mentoring his students, and setting his own boundaries. This wasn't just for big decisions, it applied to the endless small uncertainties of everyday life too. At every step, he reminded himself that the only thing he could truly control was his own attitude. He faced a similar situation with Emperor Hadrian. When he was called to the palace as a teacher, he had no idea what the future held. One day he could be a praised philosopher, the next he could be exiled. When he arrived at the palace, people showered him with praise, but he didn't get carried away. He drew a clear line for himself by saying, "I only show the way. You're the ones who walk it." That mindset meant not surrendering to the anxiety that uncertainty creates and holding on to his own stance. In his daily lessons with students, he showed the same discipline, guiding them not just with knowledge but with how to stand firm in uncertainty. These two stories tell us this: in uncertainty, anxiety and fantasies can toss you around. But when you control your stance and your thinking, you can stay grounded even without knowing the outcome. In your own life, when you face similar situations, ask yourself, which of these possibilities is actually in my control? Let go of everything beyond your attitude. Choose your thoughts and your stance. This was Epictetus' real strength, and that's where his calm in the middle of uncertainty came from. When we start managing our thoughts like this, we can handle our emotions in uncertainty much more easily. And that's why our next step will be about emotions. When Seneca was exiled during the reign of Claudius, his life was thrown into total uncertainty. Where he would live, how long he'd be there, what would happen to his family, the fate of his fortune, he knew none of it. Most people in a situation like that would fall into fear or lash out in anger. But Seneca was different. To him, generating anxiety over what we can't control was pointless. The only thing he could control was his own mind and attitude. As his journey into exile began, Seneca took with him only what he truly needed. His property had been seized, his family had left Rome for their hometowns, and his friends and political connections were in danger. On the road, other exiles clung to each other in fear and rage. Seneca stayed quiet. He had accepted the uncertainty. Instead of anxiety, he chose calm. He told his companions, "Not knowing what will happen can be unsettling, but we don't have to choose anxiety. We are the masters of our emotions." In exile, he lived in a small house. He spent his days writing, thinking, and teaching philosophy. Each morning he woke up not knowing what he'd eat, who would visit, or how comfortable he'd be. Everything was uncertain. But he didn't let himself get swept away by the surge of emotions crashing in like waves on a stormy sea. In every moment of uncertainty, he took a deep breath, observed the situation as it was, and did the only thing within his power. He chose his attitude. One day, news arrived from Claudius' court. An official delegation was on its way to his island. Was he being recalled, left in exile, rewarded, punished? No one knew. Most people in such a moment would panic, speculate, spread rumors. Seneca stayed calm. He kept managing his emotions, didn't give in to fear, and didn't fuel anxiety. This is one of the clearest examples of how to control your emotions in the face of uncertainty. We face similar situations today. Your department might suddenly close, or an unexpected crisis might hit. Most people panic, blame, or get angry. But if we apply Seneca's method, we observe the situation as it is, choose the steps we can actually control, and manage our emotions. Staying calm in uncertainty not only helps us make better decisions, but also keeps us psychologically strong. In exile, Seneca didn't just survive, he wrote, deepened his philosophy, and guided his students. Uncertainty wasn't a barrier for him. It was an opportunity to strengthen his inner discipline. He didn't know where he'd be or for how long, but instead of being frightened, he made every day count and honed his skill of managing his emotions. This experience shows us that life's uncertainties will always be there. What matters is learning to manage our emotional responses to situations we can't control. In the end, Seneca's exile teaches us this: controlling our emotions, refusing to panic or rage in the face of uncertainty, is the key to protecting both our spirit and our actions. Wherever we are, however much uncertainty we face, choosing our own attitude and managing our emotions is entirely in our hands. And that's why in the next part we'll talk about making decisions and taking action in the middle of uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just a great ruler of Rome, he was also a deep Stoic philosopher. His life is packed with examples of why it's so important to separate what we can control from what we can't. In his time, the empire was riddled with wars, plagues, and political intrigue. Marcus faced hundreds of uncertainties every single day. Military plans shifted, senators made unpredictable decisions, and the public's reaction was never guaranteed. In AD 170, during the Marcomannic Wars, thousands of soldiers faced the risk of disease and enemy attack. Their lives, the outcome of the war, and the army's safety were all completely uncertain. Many commanders panicked and made rash decisions. Marcus Aurelius did something different. He clearly defined the areas he could control: strategic moves, discipline, troop morale, and his own response. Then he took a step no one expected. He sent part of his army north, a move that became critical to winning the war. One day, a sudden outbreak swept through the army. Hundreds of soldiers fell ill and many commanders lost their composure. Marcus stayed calm, observing the situation without anger or despair. Instead, he focused on what he could do. He created a plan for the sick soldiers, isolated them, ensured they had the resources they needed, and gave them frequent morale talks. He didn't waste energy on the speed of the disease's spread or on predicting the war's exact outcome. He focused on managing his own actions and decisions. That approach built trust and stability in the army. We can see the same pattern in modern life. Imagine you're a manager faced with a sudden crisis, a major client cancels, projects stall, employees panic. Marcus Aurelius's method works here too. First, you identify what's actually within your control. Informing the team, making an emergency plan, maintaining morale and motivation. Instead of spending your energy on outside factors you can't influence, you concentrate on your own decisions and actions. This keeps you calm and effective during a crisis. Another example from Marcus's life comes from his relationship with the Roman Senate. Senators often put their own interests first and made secret deals against the emperor. When Marcus encountered such intrigue, he didn't explode in anger. He didn't try to control the senators or predict their future moves. He only kept his own stance and decisions under control, acting with justice and virtue. This gave him an unshakable inner discipline even amid constant uncertainty. As emperor, Marcus practiced defining his control zone both strategically and emotionally. He didn't generate anxiety over the outcome of wars, the spread of disease, or other people's intentions. Instead, he clarified what he could control: his reactions, his decisions, his virtuous conduct, and the responsibilities he fulfilled. This strengthened his leadership and preserved his inner calm. In the end, Marcus Aurelius shows us this: uncertainty will always be there. What matters is defining and focusing on the areas we can control. External events aren't in our hands, but our actions, decisions, and attitude are entirely up to us. This mindset is the key to staying both emotionally and strategically strong in the face of uncertainty. Now that we've learned how to manage our minds, emotions, and attitudes, it's time to light another torch. The next step: making small, courageous moves that help you keep moving forward even in uncertainty. Another way to deal with uncertainty is by taking small but courageous steps. Big goals can feel overwhelming. Taking action without knowing where you'll end up can easily trigger anxiety. Thomas Edison is one of the clearest examples of this approach. While inventing the electric light bulb, Edison faced countless failures. He made thousands of attempts, and every single time the outcome was uncertain. He didn't know which material would work best, how long the bulb would last, or how efficient the light would be. But he didn't give up. Every attempt was a learning opportunity. Each failed step brought him one step closer to success. One day, after many setbacks, a young engineer working in Edison's lab lost heart and asked, "I can see this isn't going to work. Why are we still trying?" Edison smiled and said, "We haven't failed. We've just found 1,000 ways that don't work. The next step brings us closer to the right answer." This response shows the power of taking bold but small steps in uncertainty. Not knowing the outcome can be scary, but each step builds experience. Edison's method applies just as well to our daily lives. Suppose you're starting a new project but have no idea how long it will take or what obstacles you'll face. Instead of trying to achieve the entire big goal at once, you take smaller steps. Create the first prototype, run a small test, gather feedback, then improve. Each step is a learning opportunity and gives you a stronger sense of control in the face of uncertainty. Even the Stoic Masculine channel is a good example of this. Uncertainty isn't just in work or projects, it's also in our personal lives. Learning a new skill, moving to a different city, or starting something new can create anxiety because we don't know what the future holds. Edison's approach suggests managing that anxiety by taking small, brave, deliberate steps. Each small step breaks uncertainty into pieces and makes progress tangible. Edison also showed that the process requires patience and persistence. Even after each attempt failed, he kept going without losing determination. Small steps combined with patience can lead to great success. This shows that being brave in the face of uncertainty isn't just about taking risks. It's also about moving forward in a controlled, systematic way. In the end, Thomas Edison's life teaches us this. Uncertainty isn't a reason to avoid taking bold steps. Big goals may seem intimidating, but moving forward with small, conscious steps lets you manage the process and makes uncertainty far more bearable. Edison's thousands of experiments and his determination in each one remind us of the power of small steps and one of the most effective ways to deal with uncertainty. Now that we've seen the power of small but steady steps, it's time to move on to fully embracing uncertainty and making peace with it. Nelson Mandela's life is one of the most powerful examples of dealing with uncertainty. During his 27 years in prison, he never truly knew when he would be freed, how his political struggle would end, or what the future of his country would look like. Every day he woke up to uncertainty. The future was entirely beyond his control. Yet Mandela did not surrender to this situation. What mattered to him was managing his attitude and his responses to what he could control. In prison, Mandela not only survived but kept his mind strong. Each new day brought different wardens, changing rules, and sudden transfers. These situations were completely unpredictable. Most people would have fallen into anger or despair in such an environment. But Mandela was patient. He saw every moment as an opportunity to learn. He read books, wrote letters, and strategically maintained his relationships. He focused on himself and the cause, spending no energy on external uncertainties. One day, when prison officials announced that he would be transferred to another facility, many prisoners panicked. Mandela, however, simply observed the situation and thought before reacting. "I don't know what will happen, but I can choose my attitude," he said. This approach shows the importance of emotional control in the face of uncertainty. The outcome may be unclear, but our right to choose our response is always ours. Today, making peace with uncertainty is just as important. For example, when someone faces job loss, unexpected health issues, or an economic crisis, the outcome is completely unpredictable. Most people panic or sink into pessimism. Mandela's approach applies here too. Uncertainty does not change, but we can choose our response and attitude. Staying calm, managing the process, and focusing on areas we can control make uncertainty more bearable. Mandela also became an example to others during this process. He maintained his relationships with fellow prisoners with patience and respect, and took strategic steps to achieve his political goals. Instead of remaining passive in the face of uncertainty, he shaped the situation with small but deliberate actions. This laid the groundwork for both his personal and social achievements. Even after his release, uncertainty did not end. The political future of his country and the peace process were still unclear. Mandela remained patient and determined in the face of all these unknowns, resisted anger, and directed all his actions according to his long-term goals. His example shows us that making peace with uncertainty is not merely passive acceptance, but also a conscious and virtuous attitude. In conclusion, Nelson Mandela's life teaches us this: uncertainty is a part of life and we cannot completely eliminate it. But we can choose our response, be patient, and take deliberate steps. Instead of generating anxiety over events we cannot control, choosing our attitude and managing our actions is the key to making peace with uncertainty. Combined with all the Stoic and historical examples we have seen, from Epictetus to Seneca, from Marcus Aurelius to Thomas Edison, this offers a guide that can be applied in every area of life. Now let's draw a lesson from all these examples. We began with Epictetus's ideas, saw Seneca's emotional control, watched Marcus Aurelius define his sphere of influence, learned about Thomas Edison's small, bold steps, and finally ended with Nelson Mandela's resolve in the face of uncertainty. So what's the common takeaway? Uncertainty is part of life and we can't fight it. Trying to fight it only drains energy and creates stress. But there's one thing we can control: our own attitude and actions. This is the core principle Stoics always emphasized. Life's uncertainties, whether political crises, wars, scientific experiments, or personal struggles, will always appear. What matters is how we meet them and how we respond. Think about it. We live in a world full of uncertainty every day. Plans may not go as expected, people may react unpredictably, and life is full of surprises. But like Epictetus, we can control our thoughts. Like Seneca, we can manage our emotions. Like Marcus Aurelius, we can choose what areas to control. Like Edison, we can move forward step by step. And like Mandela, we can make peace with uncertainty. This isn't a big secret, but it's hard to apply because it requires constant remembrance and practice. In daily life, even in the face of small setbacks, pausing and asking, "Can I control this? Can I choose my reaction?" makes the difference. Staying calm and moving forward step by step in the face of uncertainty not only helps us survive, it makes us freer, stronger, and more focused. So I'll ask you, what uncertainties are in your life? What situations you can't control are causing you stress? This is exactly where the lesson from the Stoics comes in. Focus on what you can control, manage your emotions, take small steps, and be patient. The outcome may be uncertain, but your attitude and actions can always be clear. Remember, uncertainty is part of life, but managing it is in our hands. Take a deep breath now. Observe the situation as it is, and take a small but bold step. This is the most important lesson we've learned from the Stoics and from people who left their mark on history. Don't fear uncertainty. Make friends with it. Thank you for watching.